Hi, I'm Hannah from Singletrack, and I'm here with Isla Rowntree, who is the founder of Islabikes, to talk about their new range of the Icons. So this isn't for children, is it, Isla?
No, Icons is a new range that we're launching today for older people.
So why older people? That's a completely other end of what you are so well known for.
Yeah, the story is very similar to what inspired me to launch our children's range, which is 13 years ago now. At that time, my sister and my close friends were having children, and as the bicycle person in the family, I would get asked for advice on what bikes to get for their children, and there wasn't anything that I felt was really appropriate at that time. They weren't very good and weren't meeting the children's needs, and that's why I started Islabikes. And now my parents are in their 70s, they're keen cyclists, but they've started to struggle with the bikes that they got, and I've made modifications for them to make cycling easier, and so that they continue to do what they love doing. And that's the same reason for doing Icons range. Yeah.
So there's 3 bikes in the range. There's a Joni.
Yep.
Which is that the
urban bike that's intended for people about town, going to the shops, visiting friends, taking the grandchildren out. It'll be okay on mild off-road, Sram Breaks, that kind of thing.
Okay, and then there's a Janice.
Yes, and that's
a
road bike.
Right, but it doesn't look, it's not a drop bar road bike though, is it?
No, I mean, given that the audience that it's aimed at, it's a very lightweight road bike intended for enthusiast road riders, but are starting to struggle with the riding position on dropped handlebars and the controls.
Okay. And then there's the Jimi, which is what we have here. So this is the mountain bike, and it's not a women's bike, but I think some people might look at it and go, oh, it's got a step-through frame, it's for women. Yeah. It's not. That's a specific design feature that you put in across the range.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to tell us why that's there?
Yeah, so all of the range have got low step-through, differing frame designs according to the usage of the bike, but as we age, obviously our bodies change, and some of our mobility becomes more restricted, and having a low step-through enables you to get on and off the bike without having to swing the leg right over the back wheel. So that's why it's got a low step-through. Nothing to do with gender. That's a throwback to the Victorian times.
Yes.
When women wore long skirts.
Big skirts, yeah. But you could wear a big skirt with it if you really wanted to.
You could wear a big skirt with it, yeah.
But that would not necessarily be the most practical outfit for what this bike is capable of, is it? This is definitely a mountain bike.
Absolutely, yeah. And what we're seeing with a generation of older people now is they're still very active, and they're not stopping doing the things that they love. And for people that are mountain bikers, that includes mountain biking. And this is a very capable mountain bike that's intended for proper off-road use, but for people that are perhaps in their 70s and starting to struggle with some of the features on more conventional mountain bikes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that there are no e-bikes in the range. This is a range that's aimed at people who are still aerobically fit, but it's some of the strength and the flexibility that's going. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So e-bikes are great and they have their place, but we're aiming for people before they're ready to make that move into e-bikes with this range.
So let's look at what some of the other features then. We've talked about the step-through frame. The whole frame, the whole bike is very light, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and weight is an obvious thing. We all love light bikes, but it becomes even more important as your muscular strength's diminishing. So what we found when we've looked at the capabilities of people as they age is their aerobic capacity is still very good, but they're not able to muscle up the hills in the way that they were. And if you give them a light bike with really low gears, they can still manage really well. So
and it is very light as well.
It is really light, yeah. And we've really made that one of the main design aims of it.
I think there's something psychological about it as well, because this sort of kind of step-through bike, you're used to picking them up and then weighing a ton. And then you pick this one up and it's like picking up a child's bike.
It's not just the physical riding it up hills where the lightweight's important, it's also getting it in and out of the back of the car as you age, and sometimes, dare I say, over stiles or gates that are
or up the steps into the studio where we are now.
Yeah, so it's the general manoeuvrability of it. It makes it much easier if it's easy to pick up.
This one I think is 9.9 kilos across the sizes. Is that right?
For this size.
For this size,
which is the medium size.
Right.
And we've got an extra small to large and the extra small is really tiny, which is also worth noting, because people in the generation that these bikes are aimed at aren't as tall as maybe our generation, because we're all getting bigger as each generation comes along, and also we do tend to shrink a bit as we age as well. So,
do you know what
the tiny one is really small?
Do you know what height the tiny one is aimed at then, or for the smallest?
It's a range of heights, but it will suit somebody down to about 4'10", 4'10" to it, and it depends on your body proportions. But I'm at the topper end of the range on the extra small.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got room to shrink then.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So you mentioned in passing there the gearing. What gearing have you gone for?
We've just gone for really low bottom gear, which is typical on most mountain bikes these days anyway. Gears have got lower and lower in the time that I've been mountain biking, but obviously having a really low bottom gear is super important. But one of the things we've done on this is we've gone for a SRAM grip shift. Right. And this is from direct feedback from my parents that they struggle with thumb shifters now. Their thumbs are getting arthritic, and they can't change on the thumb shifters, and that just allows you to use the whole hand to change.
And that's something that's on your children's bikes as well, isn't it?
For the same reason, but at the other end of the age spectrum,
So, and we have had a tester out on this bike, and I've ridden it too.
Great.
And he'd commented on the brakes and how good they were. Yeah. So you've designed them for older hands too?
Yeah, they're a standard SRAM brake. The reason that we've chosen SRAM is that the pivot on the SRAM brakes is closer to the handlebars. Okay. And that means when you wind the reach right in, that the angle of the lever is still running away from the bar a bit, because if you have a pivot a long way away, that the lever's pointing in towards the bar at the right point, which feels awkward. And they've got a very light action, and the reach does actually adjust shortest on the SRAM levers, which again we've learned through our children's bikes. Right. So that's why we've gone for those. Okay. And what else? The cranks are a different length across the range as well? Yes, they are. Yes, we've got our own cranks, so these are our own design. Lengths from 160, 165, 170, 175 for the different sizes of bike. That becomes more important when you're smaller. Having the right length cranks is important for anybody. But if you're small and forced onto longer cranks as you age, and maybe your hips and knees haven't got the full range anymore, or maybe you've had a hip or knee replacement and they don't bend as far, then the short cranks become even more important. And we've actually got even shorter ones than these available, and we'll change them at the point of purchase if you've got a particular physical need that the shorter cranks would suit you better for. And they've also got a really low Q factor, which allows us to get the bottom bracket lower, which makes getting on and off easier, but still maintain a safe lean angle so you don't catch your pedals on when you're cornering and ramps and things. And then if you wanted to make it even easier to get on and off, there's an optional dropper post as well, isn't there? Yeah, and dropper posts have obviously been designed for mountain biking and for doing much more technical terrain, so that you can get your weight down and get for when you're doing steep stuff downhill. But they're also great for actually just physically getting on and off. So if you really are struggling to get on and off and get starting and stopping, because maybe your balance or your coordination, or you've got physical limitations with your limbs, then you can put the saddle down to get on with both feet flat on the floor, start riding, lift the saddle to ride height, and then put it down again in anticipation of stopping. Yeah. And so it's and that's actually across the range. So you could have a dropper post on the road bike as well, couldn't you, if you wanted? And actually, it's probably most useful for certain people that need it on the urban bike on Joni, because when you're in about town, you're stopping and starting, getting on and off much more frequently. Yes. And we've also got some riders that are returning to cycling after a very long time, because their doctors have encouraged them to do more aerobic exercise as they age, and other aerobic exercises become difficult, and they may be very nervous, and again the dropper post is really good then. It just helps them get going. And then I think the last feature that I can remember that's about the sort of aging body was the rims. They're specifically easy to get your tyres on and off. Is that right? Yeah, absolutely. This is the sort of detail that we've got in the bike, and there are lots that you wouldn't think of unless you actually know somebody quite well. Right. That's at this stage in life, and this came directly from my parents. they won't go out on their own anymore because they can't change a tube, because their hands are becoming less dexterous and less strong. They can't get the tyre on and off anymore.
Yep.
And the advent of tubeless rims, which are absolutely great and we all love, actually makes that more difficult.
It's even worse, yeah.
It's even worse. So they've got tighter recently because of tubeless rims. And as we all know, you still have to take a tube with you because you're still going to get a puncture at some point that requires a proper fix, even though
and you don't want to be on them or
unable to get home. And the conversation that I have with my parents is, just ring me, Mum, if you can't get home. But they won't go out because they're used to being self-sufficient, and they don't want to bother me at work and drag me out if they've got a puncture. So the rims, the internal profile, is unique to us. We've designed it so that it's really easy to get the tyre on and off.
So what about geometry? What have you gone for there?
We've gone for a steering geometry that will be recognised by the target age group that's the bike's intended for. As we know, head angles have got much shallower, stems shorter and bars wider, and that's great, and we're all used to riding those bikes. But I did try my parents on that sort of steering geometry, and they just went, what's this? It feels horrible. Okay. And I think it's not just about what you're used to, it's also just noting the way that people are riding as they age. My parents still love going out, and they still ride on Singletrack, but they're not doing the riskier side of things anymore because they don't want to risk falling off and breaking a hip and that ending their cycling life. Yes. And well, so
we did notice that it says it's suitable for drops up to 61 centimetres.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
We didn't try one.
Yeah, and it's perfectly robust enough for really quite adventurous riding. But yeah, you tend to get more cautious, and the steering geometry also reflects that.
So it might be a bit interesting doing drops on this anyway, given we've got a rigid fork. So some people might think that a suspension fork would be more comfortable, but obviously you've got reasons for going for rigid. So what are they?
Yes, we agonised over the fork and actually started out expecting to put a telescopic fork on the bike when we were designing it. But any telescopic fork's going to add a minimum of a kilo of weight, right, which is a lot. And we said at the start that you mentioned lightweight is really important. And when we actually looked at the type of riding that the age group that this bike's aimed at are doing, so you're in your 70s, people are a lot more cautious because they don't want to fall off and break something that's going to end their cycling life. And when you're riding more slowly and you're not activating a suspension fork in the same way, so obviously not going to be doing dangerous drop-offs and Larry down hills anymore.
Or if you do, you go for something else.
You go, or if you are, you go for something else, exactly, and a different kind of bike. And whilst they'll be riding on Singletrack and maybe quite technical, you pick your way along it cautiously and not going particularly quickly. And so we felt that the weight penalty of a suspension fork for something that wasn't going to be activated very often in the riding really wasn't worth it. You can't get all the way up the hills to really not get much benefit from it.
But it's a carbon fork though, isn't it?
It is a carbon fork, yeah, and we designed this for this range of bikes. It's super light, it's got loads of clearance. It's also mud hugger compatible. Okay. And which the mud huggers, mud guards front and rear will fit on this bike really nicely.
That's interesting.
So the shape under the crown, it will fit straight into there.
Okay, our tester, that's the first thing he did before he set off was put mud guards front and rear. Yeah. So it's obviously an important thing.
An important thing, yeah. And we've also got fitments for bike packing-y stuff, which may not be necessarily used by this, but it makes the fork more versatile. Yep. Other people might be interested in that.
Cool. So these are available now.
Yes, as of today.
As of today, on Islabikes.
Yes, on our website.
And we've got a first ride review of this over on Singletrack. We've got a first ride review of the Jimi, and we've got a rundown of the whole Icons range on the website now. So if you're interested in this bike, want to know a bit more, want to see some more pictures, want to see how our tester got on in the snow on it, then hop on over to singletrackworld.com. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Isla, for coming today.
Thanks very much.